Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Wonderful kirtan by Anindra Prabhu. Hare Krishna. All glories to the service. So this morning, Srimad Bhagavatam class from Canto 2, Chapter 4, and text 9 and 10. 9 does not have purport, and we'll do 10 after that. So without further ado, we'll start the class. I'm actually filling in for the devotee that can't make it this morning. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari 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 Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivajakachaja Astottara Satashishi Maharaj Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivajakachaja Astottara Satashishi Maharaj Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवाचार्य गौर भक्तवृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय वृंदावन धाम की जय मथुरा धाम की जय नवद्वीप धाम की जय मायापुर धाम की जय जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय जगन्नाथ स्वामी की जय गंगा माई की जय जमुना माई की जय तुलसी देवी की जय भक्ति देवी की जय सामवेद भक्त वृंद की जय निताय गौर प्रमानंदे हरि 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 वो all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Niti Namine Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Chittapani Sri Gaura Karma Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Narayana Namaskritya Narom Chaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Udhirayat Nasya Prayeshva Bhadrisu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhavato Tamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to his crown founder, Charger, Srila Prabhupada. So, text 9. Yata gunam sapakrite yugapat kamasho piva pivati burisastweka korvan karmani janmabi yata gunam stupakrite yugapat kamasho piva pivati burisastweka korvan karmani janmabi Yatra gunam stupakrite yuga padkamasho vivati burishastuika kurvan karma nijamavi. Word for word translation. Yata, as they are. Gunan, the modes of. To, but. Pakrite, of the material energy. Yugapad, simultaneously. Kramasha, gradually. Api, also. Va, either. Vibharti maintains. Sorry. Purisha, many forms. Two, but. Eka, the supreme one. Kurvan, acting. Karmani, activities. Janmadhi, by incarnations. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is one. Whether he alone acts with the modes of material nature or simultaneously expands in many forms or expands consecutively to direct the modes of nature. Text 10. And after I read this text 3 times, anyone who wants to repeat, they can do that. Vichikitsitam etanme pravitu bhagavan yata shabde brahmani nishnata Parasmincha bhavan kalu vichikitsitam etanme pravitu bhagavan yata shabde brahmani nishnata parasmincha bhavan kalu vichikitsitam etanme pravitu bhagavan yata shabde brahmani nishnata Parasmincha Bhavan Kalu. Hare Krishna.
विचिकित्सितमेतन्मे ब्रवीतु भगवन् यत शब्दे ब्रह्मणि निष्णाता परस्मिं च भवन् खलु. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
विचिकित्सत् एतन्मे ब्रुवीतु भगवान् यथा शाब्दे ब्रह्मणि निष्णातः परिस्मिंश्च भगवान् खलु. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All right, word for word. Vichikshitam, doubtful inquiry. Etat, this. Me, of me. Ravitu, just clear up. Bhagavan, powerful like the Lord. Yata, as much as. Shabdi, the sound transcendental. Brahmani, Vedic literature. Nishnata, fully realized. Parasmin, in transcendence. Cha, also. Bhavan, your good self. Kalu, as a matter of fact. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Kindly clear up all these doubtful inquiries, because you're not only vastly learned in the Vedic literatures and self-realized in transcendence, but are also a great devotee of the Lord and are therefore as good as the personality of Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said that the Supreme Absolute Truth, Govinda, the personality of Godhead, although one without a second, is infallibly expanded by innumerable forms, none different from one another. And although he is the original person, he is still ever young and permanent, youthful, with permanent youthful energy. He is very difficult to know simply by learning the transcendental science of the Vedas, but he is very easily realized by his pure devotees. The expansions of different forms of the Lord, as from Krishna to Baladev to Sankarshan, from Sankarshan to Vasudev, from Vasudev to Aniruddha, and from Aniruddha to Pradyumna, and then again to the second Sankarshan, and from him to the Narayan Purusha avatars, and innumerable other forms, which are compared to the constant flowing of the uncountable waves of a river, are all one and the same. They are like lamps of equal power, which kindle from one lamp to another. That is the transcendental potency of the Lord. The Vedas say that he is so complete that even though the whole complete identity emanates from him, he still remains the same complete whole. He still remains the same complete whole. Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. As such, there is no validity in a material conception of the Lord produced by the mental speculator. Thus, he remains always a mystery for the mundane scholar, even if he is vastly learned in the Vedic literatures. Vedeshu durabam adulabam atma bhakto. Therefore, the Lord is beyond the limit of conception for mundane learned scholars, philosophers, or scientists. He is easily understandable for the pure devotee because the Lord declares in the Bhagavad Gita chapter 18, text 54, that after surpassing the stage of knowledge, when one is able to be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, then only can one know the true nature of the Lord. One cannot have any clear conception of the Lord or his holy name, form, attributes, pastimes, etc., unless one is engaged in his transcendental loving service. The statement of the Bhagavad Gita that one must first of all surrender unto the Lord, being freed from all other engagements, means that one must become a pure, unconditional devotee of the Lord. Only then can one know him by the strength of devotional service. Maharaj Pariksit admitted in the previous verse that the Lord is inconceivable even for the greatest learned scholars. Why then should he again request Shukadeva Goswami to clarify his insufficient knowledge about the Lord? The reason is clear. Not only was Shukadeva Goswami vastly learned in the Vedic literatures, but he was also a great self-realized soul and a powerful devotee of the Lord. A powerful devotee of the Lord is by the grace of the Lord more than the Lord himself. The personality of Godhead, Sri Ramachandra, attempted to bridge the Indian Ocean to reach the island of Lanka. But Sri Hanumanji, the unalloyed devotee of the personality of Godhead, would cross the ocean simply by jumping over it. The Lord is so merciful upon his pure devotee that he presents his beloved devotee as more powerful than himself. The Lord expressed himself to be unable to save the Rash Muni, although the Muni was so powerful that he could reach the Lord directly under material conditions. But Durvasa Muni was saved by Maharaj Ambarish, a devotee of the Lord. Therefore, not only is a devotee of the Lord more powerful than the Lord, but also worship of the devotee is considered more effective than direct worship of the Lord. Mat Bhakta Puja Vyadika. The conclusion is therefore that a serious devotee must first approach a spiritual master who not only is well versed in the Vedic literatures, but is also a great devotee with factual realization of the Lord and his different energies. Without the help of such a devotee spiritual master, one cannot make progress in the transcendental science of the Lord. And a bona fide spiritual master like Shukadeva Goswami does not speak about the Lord only in the matter of his internal potencies, but also explains how he associates with his external potencies. The Lord's pastimes in the internal potencies are displayed in his activities in Vrindavan, but the workings of his external potency are directed in his features of Karnavavasai, Karnanavasai Vishnu, Karbodaksai Vishnu, and Shirodaksai Vishnu. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti offers his good counsel to the interested Vaishnavas when he says that they should not be interested in hearing only about the Lord's activities like Rasa Leela, but must be keenly interested in his pastimes and his features of the Purusha avatars in connection with his Shrishti Tattva, creational functions, following the examples of Maharaj Pariksit, the ideal disciple, and Shukadeva Goswami, the ideal spiritual master. Oma Gnatumirandasya Gyana Gana Shalakaya Chakshu Om Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantika. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namne. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirveshesha Sunyavari Paschatyadi Shatyari. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So text 9 translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is one, whether he alone acts with the modes of material nature, or simultaneously expands in many forms, or expands consecutively to direct the modes of nature. In text 10, English translation, kindly clear up all these doubtful inquiries, because you are not only vastly learned in the Vedic literatures and self-realized in transcendence, but are also a great devotee of the Lord, and therefore as good as the personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna. These two are being spoken by Shukadeva Goswami. Sorry, I'll take it back. These two are being spoken to Shukadeva Goswami by Maharaj Pariksit. So he wants more explanation. Maharaj Pariksit's questions were all excellent questions because they help us understand Krishna more. They gave Shukadeva Goswami such a wonderful opportunity to describe the Lord himself, the Lord's form, and the Lord's pastimes, the Lord's paraphernalia. All of that questions were directed from Maharaj Pariksit in such a way that Shukadeva Goswami was able to describe all of that, and we are beneficiaries from it, actually through the Lord's devotees' mercy, Srila Prabhupada's mercy, translating and giving explanations, understandings about it through his purports. So we are fortunate that those questions were asked by Maharaj Pariksit. He was inquiring about what he should do and what he needs to understand prior to leaving his body. Also, those who are involved in some other reading groups, they know, and I'll throw this out there, that this is a wonderful set of 3 books that's translated and even given some commentary by Srila Prabhupada disciples, Gopi Parana Dana Prabhu. And that's the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. When the Srimad Bhagavatam dialogue between Maharaj Pariksit and Shukadeva Goswami was finished, then the next thing was, of course, we know Maharaj Pariksit had been cursed to die in 7 days, and Takshaka, the snake bird, was supposed to come bite him, and that would start the process of his leaving his body. Takshaka did not come right away. So there was a gap, a period between the time that Shukadeva Goswami had finished speaking Srimad Bhagavatam and Takshaka arrived. In that time, Uttara, the mother of Maharaj Pariksit, approached her son, Maharaj Pariksit, and asked him to summarize or to bring up main points that Shukadeva Goswami had told Maharaj Pariksit. So she, Uttara, asked her son, and more information came out. As Maharaj Pariksit was answering that question to his mother, that was the whole Brihad Bhagavatamrita being born. So in Mahabharata, we'll get to this sometime. I know I'm digressing a little bit. But in Mahabharata, there are a number of pure devotees of the Lord who have written, including Vyasadeva. But there are others too who wrote. And when they're reporting the account of the Mahabharata, some of the Mahabharata that's written have many more verses to it than others. And we know from our practical experience that sometimes something is described by one person and they will talk about the general thing so you know, but there'll be some details that may be left out by one person or may be left out by others. So there's Jaimini, Rishi, and one Mahabharata, again, I won't spend too much time on it. One Mahabharata was written with the aim of talking more about the services that the Pandavas did in relating to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And then there's Mahabharata that is on the level of describing some pastimes in a general sense. And there's a third one, but again, this is not about Mahabharata, so I won't spend too much time on it. The point is there's differences when people are describing the general thing is there, but there are also differences in terms of the details sometimes. That's what happens. Differences does not mean that they're saying something against it. No, we're talking about difference in terms of in some books, in some accounts, more detail is given than others. That's all we're saying. Anyway, so in this situation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is being described by Maharaj Pariksit. In text 9, true enough, there's a question being asked, but this statement in text 9 is by Maharaj Pariksit, his knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and summarizing based on the external energy. He says the Supreme Personality of Godhead is one. And if he acts alone with the material nature, or if he expands in many forms, or expands consecutively, in other words, he can expand in many forms at once, or may choose to come from one to the next, to the next, to the next, based on what he wants to do for the material modes of nature. The question that Maharaj Pariksit asked concerned the modes of material nature. So, in the Katha Upanishad, it is supported there, 2.2.13, so division 2, chapter 2, text 13. Nitya nityanam chaitanas chaitananam. So that is made clear. Chaitanya, Sri Prabhupada means says living, nitya means eternal. So we are all living and we are eternal as far as the soul is concerned. The body would die. Plenty bodies have been taken by us in different lifetimes, and every one of them has died, stopped working after a while. The soul comes out, the body actually is not functional unless the soul is in it. So when the soul comes out and the soul never returns, then the body is useless. Can't be used anymore. And that is the situation. But the soul is eternal. So we are all living and eternal. God is also living and eternal. But Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. That one maintains all. So God has provided food for everyone, all living entities, including those ones that don't even pray to the Lord, the non-human body type of souls. Hmm? There are hundreds and thousands of living entities other than human beings. In fact, the types of body that's there, 95% of that is non-human type. Only 5%, and not even a little less than 5%. It's like 4.75%. That's human, classified human. In numbers, 8 million types of bodies are not human, and 400,000 are human. And sometimes we talk about the percentages because we say, oh, 400,000, that's a lot. That's a lot of human type bodies. That may be in our minds because we see things as very tiny. We are tiny. We are in a tiny planet. We're in a smaller universe and so on. So how much can we actually perceive? The ocean is looked at as tiny to large entities, huge entities, but we think the ocean is very vast because of how we codify things. So 400,000 may seem big, but compared to 8 million, 400,000 is only 5% of the whole total 8,400,000. So when a person is in a human body, we're very fortunate. Take advantage of it. Don't live like the other ones, like we call it dogs, hogs, camels, asses, donkeys, as Srimad Bhagavatam describes. We shouldn't live at the animal level. But the Lord takes care of all of them. Hundreds and thousands of living entities are there, millions actually, other than human beings. They have no business. They don't have any profession, but they don't have any economic problem either. Hmm? You never see a bird, your Papa says, that has died fasting or without food. They always get food. Or an elephant that eats tons of food. You never see an elephant that's died without food. Hundreds of pounds the elephant eats. But he's got an eating arrangement by God. The ants may be eating just one grain, and it's also got an arrangement. So that one supreme personality of Godhead supports everyone. Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. That one God, the big soul, Paramatma, he is maintaining all other living entities. That's the Vedic injunction. And actually, we're being maintained by God. He's supplying rain. From rain, there is grain, and you're eating the grains, therefore you're living. Anyone that has planted any seeds for vegetables, they know very well that when it rains, all he has to look after the rain is finished to do is just look outside. And they see that the plants for the grains are very, very, very healthy looking. And they're very robust. And they are supporting themselves nicely. The leaves, wonderful. They're all perked up because there's rain. Who gives the rain? Krishna. Although he is deputed that agency to Indra, but the rain is not for Indra. It's for Krishna. He makes it happen. Now, in text 10, we'll read the translation again. That is when Maharaj Pariksit is actually asking a question. Kindly clear up all these doubtful inquiries. There are questions that were asked in previous texts also, and now he's summarizing it. Because you're not only vastly learned in the Vedic literatures and self-realized in transcendence. So this is Maharaj Pariksit praising the ability, the, if you like, scholarly ability of Shukadeva Goswami. But then he says, that is there, but you're also a great devotee of the Lord. That is, he's also a practicing devotee. And therefore, you are as good as a personality of Godhead. In terms of course, nobody is at the Lord's level. There's no second. Nobody equal to him. So he's second to none. So what Maharaj Pariksit means in this case, according to the activity of Shukadeva Goswami, he's doing exactly as the Lord himself would do if he was in that position of explaining. And he has been in that position of explaining, as you know, in the Battle of Kurukshetra, Krishna himself was explaining to Arjuna. Mm. Clearly what his position is, what our position is, how we're supposed to serve him, how we're supposed to deal with the material energy, and even the different religions, all of that, and convince Arjuna totally, and then show the universal form also on the request of Arjuna. So this all happened before the war in Kurukshetra. But here, a pure devotee of the Lord is also doing what the Lord did, and explaining even in greater detail than the Lord did. And this is a point that Srila Prabhupada has brought up, that the Lord deliberately makes his pure devotee get even more accolades, for lack of a better word, or shine more than him. Even in the Battle of Kurukshetra, he said, I'm not fighting. He played the role of Partha Sarati, the chariot driver for Arjuna, so that Arjuna will get all of the praises for doing service as a soldier, as a general to Krishna, satisfying Krishna's request. So our life should be all about satisfying Krishna's request, satisfying Krishna's senses through the agency of the directions given by Guru, just like Shukadeva Goswami is playing the role of Guru here. So in the purport for this text 10, Srila Prabhupada says, so the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, he is one without a second. But even though that is true, he has expanded himself in innumerable forms. And those innumerable forms are none different from one another in terms of the Shakti that's there. So when he expands himself, he doesn't lose ability. Just like if we subtract 9 from 11, we just get 2 at the end. No. If Krishna is 11 and you subtract 9 expansions from it, he's still 11. Papa uses even simpler words. He says in the math, 1 plus 1 is not 2 to Krishna. 1 plus 1 is 1 to Krishna. And 1 minus 1 is not 0 to Krishna. 1 minus 1 is still 1. In other words, he is the original person and he expands to innumerable forms for the reasons based on his will, what he wants to do. He does not lose any potency. He is still the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is why he can expand himself to relate as a husband to 16,108 wives. He was not relating to them as a fraction of himself. The Supreme Personality of Godhead fully, the Prakash form, when he expands like that and maintains the same form, that is called Prakash. When the form is different, that's Vilas. It's explained in the Shastra. So Srila Prabhupada is saying, he infallibly expands himself to different forms, innumerable forms, but they're not different in potency from each other. He's the original person. And even though he expands, he's still ever young and with permanent youthful energy. So sometimes those who don't understand God very much, especially those in the religions, as Chandamali Swami said in one place, I think it's in Italy, they've tried to have a representation of God and they drew him as an old man, or they sculpted him as an old man. But old age has to do with the physical body. The soul doesn't age like that. Of course, the one who did the sculpting does not understand who God really is, even though it's all here. He's ever young with permanent youthful energy. If he wants to go through based on his pastimes, like a baby and grow up to a certain point, that's his prerogative. He decides how he wants to do. He came here last time, 5,000 years ago. He lived to be 125 years. Then he left. He left after 125 years. A better way to put it. But 125 years, if we look at our Kali Yuga, must be very, very old person. No, he didn't. He looked still useful the whole time. The whole time. Although by his own will, he started off as a baby with Nanda Maharaj and Madhya Yashoda and grew up based on the pastimes he wanted to perform, including the wonderful one of lifting up Govardhan Hill when he was 7 years old. He went through that type of growth with his body, which is also the soul. Body and soul are the same for the Lord. But because of the pastimes he wanted to perform, to please his devotees, he does not descend onto a material planet for the demons, to kill the demons. He descends usually to enthuse his devotees. Now, if he wants to fight, sure, he will come and fight the demons or do mock fighting, which is just kind of playing around with the cowherd boys. He does that too, because they themselves want to, give him pleasure that way. That's one thing. Mm-hmm. But he expands for different reasons. And even when he comes, his different expansions based on the pastimes he wants to do, and then the arrangement he has made, usually through Narada Muni and Yogamaya, especially. Mm-hmm. Then the pastimes unfold in a way that's so fascinating to his devotees. If they're demons and he wants to get rid of them, he will. Sometimes he uses the external energy, the things about it to get rid of demons. He can do that easily. So he does things as he likes. And that is the Supreme Lord. He expands from Krishna to Balaram, and from Balaram to Sankarshan, then to Vasudev, Vasudev to Aniruddha, and then Pradyumna. So those are the Chaturvyuha, the four forms of the Lord. And they expand to Narayan. And then there's a second Vasudev, Aniruddha, Sankarshan, and Pradyumna. And from the Mahasankarshan, this one, the second one, then the Karnodakshaya Vishnu or Mahavishnu comes. That's the Vishnu form from which the universes of the material universe come out from the Mahatattva through his pores. And from each one of them, he expands to Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And so there's Garbhodakshaya Vishnu for each universe. And from Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, the lotus flower that grows from his navel stem. The stem has the 14 planetary systems. The lotus is when Lord Brahma is born. So there's a Brahma for each universe. And the size of the universe also has something to do with the features of Lord Brahma. So we have Lord Brahma with 4 heads. And the 4 heads actually came from his own bewilderment in trying to see all the different directions, north, south, east, west. So then the Lord allowed him to be able to see at the same time. And this is how the 4 heads came about. But there are Brahmas with 8 heads, 16 heads, 32 heads, 64 heads, 128 heads, all the way up to hundreds of thousands of heads on one Lord Brahma. And the universes that each one does based on the number of heads also bigger. So the universe that we're in is actually one of the smaller ones. So, and the lifetimes also change. In other words, the lifetimes of Lord Brahma, they also change. As all of this is happening in one breath of Karnodakshaya Vishnu or Mahavishnu. So that is something about his external energy and how he connects with it. So he is, in fact, the whole complete identity. Everything emanates from him, but he still remains the whole, as Prabhupada explained, 1 minus 1 does not become 0. Even though that one that he's expanded is, in fact, the Lord himself in the Vishnu form. Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. This is the invocation section of Sri Ishopanishad. So he remains a mundane scholar because a mundane scholar looks at how the material energy is put together And if they try to use that to explain who the Lord is, they can't. They can't. You tell a mundane scholar that 4 minus 2 becomes 4, you're going to say you don't know your subtractions very well. 4 minus 2 is 2. But the Lord doesn't expand that way. Hmm? So the whole time that he was in Dwarka, he was relating to the queens in 16,108 forms, none of them less in potency than the original personality. So the Lord is beyond the limit of conception for mundane learned scholars. And those who don't surrender to him, he keeps them in the dark because they want something else. So Krishna allows them something else. But that thing is darkness because they'll never understand who Krishna is. And this is true. I have met some people who are even religionists here in Mechanicsburg. And one of them was bold enough to say, Krishna is not God. And I got so fed up, I just walked away from it. I just put my hands up in a prayerful kind of, thank you, but that's it. I'm not even going to speak to you. Let's do. The Indian body, Mataji said, Krishna is not God. End the story. And I was in, there was nothing to tell. I was not going to argue with this person. She's covered up, period. She's covered up. Hmm? You can't do much to help them. Maybe just some prasadam as a mercy from everybody to them, but there's nothing else to do. So a person, when they surpass the stage of knowledge, they are able to be engaged in devotional service of the Lord. Some devotees are very convinced, and some devotees are very fortunate that right from the get-go, what little did they hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead turns them to Krishna immediately. Srila Prabhupada explains that those people have had connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in previous lives, and they may not have gotten to the point where, based on their practices, there was not enough for the Lord to actually allow them to go at that time. And so they came to finish up. So much so that sometimes some people are almost to the point where Krishna says, had they done it just a few things more, they would go to the spiritual world after that lifetime. But because of that, a few more things that they've done, maybe offenses, and sometimes offenses is the one that is the big one that tends to stop people, no matter how much you do. If you're offensive, you're not going back to Godhead. You cannot go join those who are there now, the majority of living entities, and start offending them. See, if you offend here, this is the character that we're building up. This is all to form a proper character this is devotion service. What we're doing is to finally not only see ourselves as a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but to also develop the kind of character that is good enough or almost good enough to be able to mix and mingle with those who are in the spiritual world. We say almost good enough. Sometimes just a little bit of something else could have been done. And the spiritual master pleads for the Lord to grant that, despite when the person has the understanding you can't do anything like that, the little minor wrong things, then they will allow you because it's all based on the mercy. But sometimes that situation is not taken all the way to the end to allow the person, and therefore they ask them to come back. But there's so little to be done that even sometimes in the womb, the person may leave the body. That happens, and then they go back to the spiritual world. Or they may be born, and within the first 3 years, they leave the body. Born to a devotee now. We're not talking about this non-devotees. It's all about devotees. Devotee Mataji, it's those who are going back to the spiritual world. But they will take, the devotee before, they're coming back, they will definitely take birth in the womb of a devotee Mataji. Come as a human, not the other types, non-human. So that's the way it's always arranged that way. So the priority is given in that way. But they can also go back within the first 3 years. And it did happen, to some devotees. I know one of my god sisters, gave birth, the first child to a stillborn child. The child was alive to close to the time of delivery and then left the body. Obviously, it was traumatic to herself and her husband, but the spiritual master, Bhakti Maharaj, was there at the time and spent time one-on-one with them, one with the couple, and explained the situation, that actually they had done a service to the soul that had left. They had done a service to the soul that had left because the soul had very little to do to go back to Godhead. And so there was some um, amount of suffering that was all to be done in the womb. And that's why she took birth there. And because being in the womb is also a form of difficulty for the baby. And so, because, not confinement is there, and, the head is the last 3 months is upside down, all of those things, in amniotic fluid that has some germs in there, and it bites the child. There's so many difficulties that the child goes through. So that was what they were supposed to actually be dealing with. And that was all that was left, and they could go back to the spiritual world. So when the Bodhi Mataji's miscarry, that actually is a service that's being done. Mundane people, that's some situation that they have to pay back connected with karma, but not for the Bodhi with a soul that's in that womb. There's a different situation for that. Anyway, so after surpassing the stage of knowledge, one is able to be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. And only in devotional service would one be able to know the true nature of the Lord. How does one get to know the true nature of the Lord? Well, actually, the question is, one does not get to know like that. The Lord actually reveals to the devotee. So there's a revelation to the devotee based on the Lord being satisfied with the extent to which the devotee is connected with or determined with, from the heart, to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to serve Guru, and to serve the devotees. So if we slack in our devotional service, then we are actually doing ourselves a lot of harm. If we slack in devotional service, we're sabotaging ourselves. We will not really understand the true nature of the Lord. If we could just make a show of it in the assembly of the body, still we will not understand the true nature of the Lord. We have to serve through inconvenience, even when there's inconvenience. That's the other day we were talking about. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and I was quoting to the Prabhupada about it. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, when I'm serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead and I experience difficulty and inconvenience, that's when I'm the happiest. So that is a message to us that we don't come up with excuses because I don't want to do this, I'm not. No, the consistency should be there. Not only should there be the consistency, there should also be the desire. The desire should be high. We should be enthusiastic in service. And no matter what kind of situation we face, we do our very best. We just don't give up, oh, this is too much. But then we're just favoring the body. But even the body doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we should be determined to serve to the best of our ability. If we chicken out, then what should the Lord do? What should the Lord's agents do? As sometimes our gurus say, what can be done? This person has been told everything that they need to do. The things have been explained to him or her, and somehow they're not interested. They favor the body so much, or they're so attached to the material energy, they want to go have fun when they're supposed to do service. All of these things come back and bite you, and the next time you give them the body and not allowed to go back to the spiritual world, it's hard. And my Guru sometimes explains that some maybe even get a chance to see the spiritual world, but not allowed to enter. Now, if that's not going to hurt, I don't know what will. Still brought back. Basically showed that this is what you could have had, but you had a chance here and you played with it, therefore go back and take another body. And that happens because sometimes the Diksha Guru, the one that gave initiation, is the one that takes the person because he's the one on contract with the spiritual world that they would lead the devotee, guide the devotee in such a way that he will make it back to the spiritual world. But even so, the guidance is given, but it's never forced on the devotee. It's all about love. When the devotee pays attention and does what they're supposed to, then the spiritual master is even more empowered to speak on behalf of the devotee before they are allowed back. And so sometimes it's a point of where they meet, where the spiritual master, the devotee, and the Lord meet, and that discussion is had. That's why sometimes some devotees may see the spiritual world and still, because of them not taking it seriously, they will realize that there is a spiritual world. It's not a hoax. It's true. But then they put back in the human body, come do another lifetime here. Nobody should put themselves in that situation. Take advantage. See, Papa says, not my words. See, Papa, take advantage of it. Things have been made easy. Lord Chaitanya says, just chant Hare Krishna. And the japa was 64 rounds, and now we're doing 16. The mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And Krishna would allow us back with the chanting, with the serving, and certainly not offending anybody. So we should be enthusiastic in chanting. We should be enthusiastic in serving. We shouldn't come up with any excuses. Then the Lord will allow us back. Open our hearts, and we'll be really, really happy even while we're here. So we shouldn't get ourselves in a situation where we say we're surrendered to the Lord, but then we're still surrendering to the material energy. One must be a pure, unconditional devotee of the Lord. Sometimes we make mistakes, and that is part of, human condition. So we make mistakes. But our intention should always be pure. Intention cannot be wrong. Activity, sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we don't even intend to, but the mistakes come anyway because we're not perfect. We don't have perfect senses, so the mistakes would come. But the intention, stay away from material energy. You won't find the happiness you say you want. It won't be in material energy. Don't be fooled by all kinds of advertisements saying, oh, this you can enjoy, that you can enjoy yourself. It doesn't happen. After a while, you see the emptiness in it. It's fleeting. It doesn't have much real solid enjoyment. Solid enjoyment comes steadily, grows from devotional service. That's where it is at. So Maharaj Pariksit is asking for those explanations. And Srila Prabhupada tells us in this purport that the Lord is so kind to his devotee that even sometimes he puts the devotee in a higher situation, seemingly, than him based on what he does and what he makes his devotee do. Case in point, the Papa didn't quote the example, but we all know this, that Lord Chaitanya came to spread the holy name. He said, I want my name spread everywhere, every town and village. Did he go to every town and village? No, not on the earth. He went to every town and village in India. Then he made his devotee go every town and village, the whole world. Therefore, he glorified his devotee in terms of a service more than his own service. An example Srila Prabhupada gave here was that Lord Ramachandra attempted to bridge the Indian Ocean with rocks. And that was wonderful in itself, making the rocks float, and the whole monkey army being able to go to Lanka. But what could Hanuman do? Hanuman could just simply, and he's a devotee, unalloyed devotee of Sri Ram, but he could just jump. He didn't need the bridge. He didn't even walk on the bridge. He could just jump from one end and he would be in Lanka. But Lord Ramachandra crossed it by walking on this. So he gave more of credit and ability to Hanumanji for that pastime. So if we give our hearts to the Lord will also put us in different situations where great things will be done, just like Srila Prabhupada did. And finally, Srila Prabhupada credited all of that to his spiritual master. And that is what we should be. Never feel so big that I did this, I did not. It is all through the mercy of a spiritual master. So that we should actually understand. Krishna is the one that put spiritual mastership there. Tat vidi panipatena paripashnena sevaya. He said, approach the spiritual master and inquire from him submissively and also render service to him. So that's our way of connecting with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mm? And the Lord gives his devotees so much glory. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you for hearing. And now, no, it's on top of the hour, but still, if you have any question, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. If there's anyone that's
Hare Krishna,
interested,
please accept my humble obeisance,
Hare
Shri
Krishna,
Prabhupada.
bless you, Prabhupada.
I really like the second last paragraph in this purport, where Shri Prabhupada said that the conclusion is therefore that a serious devotee must first approach a spiritual master who not only is well versed in the Vedic literatures, but also a great devotee with factual realization of the Lord and his interferent energies. And I was coming back from leadership meetings for 3 days. We had a very wonderful class by His Grace Kalakanta Prabhu. And in that class, he mentioned a very powerful point. He was speaking about Srila Prabhupada's sacrifice for us. And how much at the very last stage of his life, 70 years of age is the last stage of someone's life. And Srila Prabhupada did not allow the last stage of his life to be an obstacle in his service to a spiritual master, which Kalakanda Prabhu was saying that he took risks and he sacrificed the last stage of his life. And Kalakanda Prabhu threw this question back to all of us in the class. He says, what are we going to do to please our spiritual master if we don't take risks and sacrifice? And that was a very powerful statement that he's mentioned in class that I think it was Friday morning, where he says that if we do not sacrifice and we don't take risks in our service, how are we pleasing our spiritual master? Because Srila Prabhupada was an excellent, amazing, fine example that in his last stage of life, he was taking risks and sacrificing to please the spiritual master. So the question is back on us. What are we doing? Are we willing to take risks and sacrifices to please our spiritual master? So that was a very powerful statement that I wanted to share by Kalakanta Prabhu, to all the leaders. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for sharing. This is for not just the leaders, for all devotees. What are we going to do? If we are in the temple and we see that some devotees are up doing practically everything that they can lay their hands on to serve, and we're not doing anything, a bell should go in my head. This person is getting all the spiritual credits from service in the temple, and I'm not getting any. That's the way we should think. And therefore, we can change that. It's possible. We can change that. But in changing that too, we should also be willing to work as a team. Not feeling that we have our solutions to everything, but work as a team. Especially when it comes to dealing with management. If you have an idea, the best thing to do is approach with that idea in all humility. And the easiest way to show humility is not to present the idea like you know better, because in most cases you don't know better than the manager, because the manager connects with meetings and like the GBCs and so many things are coming. So they're looking at definitely, you're looking at the manager that has, especially the president, that has a bigger picture. So in humility, the best thing to do is put your suggestions in a question form and ask, can so and so and so and so be done? If you put it in a question form and that idea is a good idea, you're going to get a yes. And also, you have to be patient enough to see when it could be done. Just because you said a yes does not mean it's going to be done right away, because then it becomes a matter of priority, things that need to be done, and whether that which you've suggested in a question form is actually applicable right there and then, or has to wait because there are other things more pressing. The management or the leader knows that. But if you put it in a question form, and actually, because the manager is aware of the bigger picture, that that thing is not probably suitable at that time, they will answer you. You see, they won't reject you. If you put it in a question form, you don't get rejected. But if you suggest it should be like that, and then you're told it's not going to be like that, you have been rejected then. That's why asking a question is smart. When you ask a question based on what you have to do, then you just get an answer. The answer may be yes, the answer may be no, the answer is, yeah, it's a good idea, but we have to wait a little bit. But if you come thinking that you know the solution to everything else, be like this and be like this, and you don't know the bigger picture, and then the president decides that it can't be because they know from hmm, the, from the GBCs and how it's going as a whole, that idea may not fit. So this is one way to get around the false ego. Ask questions rather than make suggestions directly. Put it in a question form. And if it's good, you're going to get a yes. That means you made your suggestion. If it's no, then it doesn't fit, but then it doesn't also bother you like when you be absolutely rejected because you talked like you knew everything when in fact the person that you're talking to has access to the bigger picture of the whole society. So that's one tip that works well if you want to use it. That's up to you. Hare Krishna. Any other questions or suggestions or realizations? Now you know questions are some of the best things. I could tell you a story about it, but we're already past 9. Literally, somebody who suggested something that was no good, and the spiritual master just literally told him off in front of everybody. And the next person that asked, wanted the suggestions and put it in a question form, and the spiritual master answered it very nicely. So I have practical experience of it. I just saw it. Any final questions or realizations? If not, then thank you very much for coming on today. We always learn together through Srimad Bhagavatam, wonderful texts and purports. Panchakalpatarubhasya kripa sunibhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you again and have a wonderful Krishna conscious week. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Go to Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Go to Prabhupada.